Hi, everybody, and thanks for attending today's webinar, How to Improve IT Productivity for a Distributed Workforce. My name is Raisa, and I'm on the marketing team at Progress. Before I turn it over to our speakers, I have a couple of housekeeping items to cover. If you have any questions, you can submit them in the Q&A section at any time, and they will be answered at the end of the presentation. For the best viewing experience, we recommend closing any additional programs or browser sessions running in the background as webinars are bandwidth intensive. And finally, as always, this webinar is being recorded and an on-demand version of the presentation will be available by you in next couple of days. Let's go ahead and start. Over to you, Sudeep.
Thank you, Riza. I'd like to welcome everyone to this webinar. Over the next hour, we'll present key trends around productivity in the context of IT for a distributed workforce. We have a panel of experts in Nishchal and John who will delve deeper into the nitty-gritty of Chef Desktop and have some geek out time at the end. So you can send in those questions and we'd love to hear from you at the end of the webinar, right? So with that, let's start, right? By setting some context to the scenario here with some current trends, right? So what we are seeing in terms of what's impacting IT productivity in regard to a distributed workforce, right? The pandemic, of course, has accelerated the move to remote work for many organizations. And executive leaders should really anticipate that, as organizations recover from the COVID-19 impacts, working from home will continue as normal and as an expected part of our work environment. Now, Gartner assumes that by the end of 2023, more than 100%, more than 90%, sorry, of infrastructure and operations will have most of their staff working remotely. And not surprisingly, the percentage of all employees working remotely, at least some of the time, has rapidly increased from about 30% to 76% during the pandemic. And post the pandemic, this percentage is expected to level out at about 48%. So that's a nearly 60% increase from the outset of 2020, right? So sum and substance, the workforce is going to be distributed. INO teams themselves are going to be distributed as well. Well, let's look at what the IT folk and DevOps folk are actually going to be doing during this time of being, working, in a distributed fashion. And DevOps.com surveyed about 620 engineers to examine what they do to keep everything running like clockwork, right? From day-to-day activities, key processes, tools and challenges that they face. When the survey asked for feedback on how much time is being spent to improve infrastructure and setting up automation for repetitive tasks, how much time is typically spent fighting fires and communicating, and what does it take to keep the lights on, right? And it's very clear that most IT and DevOps folk spend time on infra management, deploying changes, and automating repetitive tasks. Now, this is not new. But the point being that you're now going to be doing this for a distributed workforce while being distributed as a team as well, right? And diving a little deeper into, hey, what does it take to manage desktops in just in terms of looking at that a little more closely. Managing desktops has been, of course, an area where a lot of IT people spend time on, and there are challenges, right? From a lack of trained qualified staff, ensuring policies are adhered to. The challenges are quite a few, but I did not even mention compliance, auditing, reporting, or plain visibility to the status of the fleet, right? And each one of those itself is a huge challenge in and of itself. So in summary, IT folk are really trying to find efficiencies and are trying to eliminate these manual processes where possible. They're trying to automate these processes, critical or repetitive, for efficiencies. And they're also trying to accommodate a range of devices. So not only many organizations have a hybrid set of devices where they may have a set of Windows-based PCs, or they have another set of Mac OS type of devices. In some case, they may even have Linux devices, right? So managing these remotely in an automated fashion is very complicated, time consuming, because then you have, at least at minimum, two different tools that you're using, and by consequence, you're using different tools means that you have a lack of comprehensive visibility across the organization. You can't really have a single pane of glass where you're seeking configuration status of all these devices, right? You're always, seeking an easier, more automated, a more efficient way, if you will, to manage a large number of devices. So you're doing all of this, and you're also trying to reduce risk, right? And that's the other part of the story, right? Because it's difficult to deploy and manage these thousands of devices and laptops, because until this point, it's been very point and click, but it's hard to maintain these vast set of devices under continuous compliance. And organizations, IT folk are looking for a dynamic way to really enforce not just industry standard compliance, but also enterprise level security and those compliance standards as well, right? You're looking for an easy way to establish risk profiles for any given IT resource. And this would actually lend itself a little to the zero trust concept as well, right? And this is where I think Chef Desktop comes in. It's a really easy way for you to empower your IT managers through a level of automation, right? Chef is known for its automation and our efficiency at driving automation efforts. So this is a kind of natural progression, is what we're saying, right? We want to help organizations gain control over the sprawling set of IT resources, and obviously reduce the risk in security compliance issues of their fleet. What we're essentially trying to do here is what Agile has done, for software development, or DevOps is doing for operations, right? We're trying to bring in that level of thinking to IT resource management, so that in line of pipeline automation or automation through code, something that can be done in a codified fashion to efficiently manage your fleet from with giving you a single pane of glass in terms of visibility, right? And that's what Chef Desktop aims to do. With that said, we're trying to drive efficiencies, and I've said this multiple times, through automation, by allowing that automation to happen through code. And so on the right-hand side, you see our standard Ruby language, but also at the bottom, on that pane of glass, you see really a very simplified access that you have in terms of flexibility of using Ruby and the Chef cookbooks, or you could use a simplified version straight out of the box in YAML. And we are also providing templated content, right? That is a set of set for different servers and also different software and different operating systems. So you're able to manage a company-wide fleet, irrespective of the operating systems. And we support Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. So there's diversity supported via the same interface. You're also able to detect changes in your desired state, right? And have change control, and also be able to correct those configuration drifts as they occur. You have an extensible configuration control, and therefore you're also able to create different configuration profiles given your specific needs. You can also create a set of images and a set of standards for your developers, for instance. You can also transition a different configuration profile for your finance people, or for your HR people, or your sales team, right? And therefore, those risk profiles can be modified and implemented across the board in a very standard and in a very efficient manner. It also enables you to configure and manage what we're calling non-traditional setups, right? Which is especially powerful for air-gap type of devices, which allows you to maximize the efficiency of your development through this automation. And more importantly, right, you gain visibility in the form of a single pane of glass, and continuously have visibility to your configuration status throughout this dispersed different type of operating systems that you're managing, right? You're able to drill down into views and layers. You're able to pre-group that information, and that could include, type of devices that you're using, their status or error conditions. Those are all things that you can group and visualize. And given this visibility, you're also able to correct any necessary configuration drifts that happen straight up from there itself, right? So give that convenience is also given to you. In terms of risk support, we have a level of continuous compliance capabilities. We're constantly enforcing security, maybe at an industry level, security compliance, or at company policy levels, right? And you were previously able to extensively cover what you were doing for your servers. You're now able to do, cover that same compliance for your devices as well. And you're able to create these custom profiles depending on your enterprise and your needs, right? You're able to continuously detect the status, but also correct those drifts from a compliance standpoint that might happen throughout time, and do all of this, and also apply automated remediation. That's also a capability and a functionality that we're going to depict here in a bit. So in terms of the supported features, one of my favorites is the one with zero-touch enrollment and provisioning, right? You're able to automate software and app deployment through the device. You're also able to automate policy settings with fine-tuning capabilities and able to have this consolidated dashboard and visibility. Apart from that, you also have a transparent device unknown state, right? You're able to very easily onboard the chef-created content, which is what I said in terms of pre-packaging of those devices and viewing them. Again, the supported platforms that we have are Windows, Mac, and Linux, right? So that's just in terms of the content that we have, and in terms of the flavors that we offer, we do this. We have Chef Desktop at a basic entry level. That allows you to have the configuration management functionality of the tool, all based on CIS centered and chef curated content, but also a more advanced Chef Desktop compliance option, where you have not only the configuration and observability that you saw in the dashboard, but also the security policy and compliance capability that is provided as well. Well, these are some of the use cases that our customers have already are using Chef Desktop for, right? And we've signed up a few customers since we had our official launch recently, and we have a few international customers that are looking to really drive control, compliance, and efficiency. We have customers that use Chef Desktop to allow them to configure laptops and desktops according to their specific employee needs and groups. But also enable others that have to enable their customers, right, to maintain a desired state and control those drifts from a desired state and track and audit all of those drifts. So again, here we're trying to drive that mentality of automation through codifying features and automating it in a very efficient manner, and trying to manage that laptop configuration and compliance through automation, allowing for employee productivity and efficiency, being, for example, in not having to wait for 90 days, in many cases for developers to gain full control of their devices and access to all the systems that they need, right? So it's a very efficient way to hit the ground running for new tools, and for new employees as well. And while I very briefly alluded to use cases, I also want to add that we've had some existing customers who are using Chef Desktop, and they're doing it very efficiently. If you look at companies like Facebook, who manage upwards of a few 100,000 devices with a team of 5, and they've been doing that with Chef for, I don't know, many years, right? At least 5+ years. And Uber's, one of our newest customers, and they've been using Chef for Desktop for a very long time as well. And it's all centered around efficiency, right? So that's a little bit in terms of just the use cases, and also some of the customers that we have and the use cases that they've used it in. With that, we'll have a demo up next with Nishal. But before that, you'll see a couple of poll questions pop up. Do take time to respond to those polls, and we'll discuss the results of these questions towards the end of the webinar. And that'll be interesting to see as well, right? Just in terms of what the room thinks is our challenges and what they do most often. With that, I'll hand it off to Nishal, our Senior Product Manager for Desktop, who'll take us through the demo of Chef Desktop. With that, Nishal, over to you.
Thank you, Sudeep. Let me share my screen. All right, can someone confirm if you can? Sudeep, can you share my screen?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's safe. Uh, so in today's demo, I'm going to, we'll cover the following topics, right? So I will first start with a brief overview of Chef Desktop, and followed by that, I will demonstrate desktop capabilities through a simple example of managing a screensaver setting on Windows machines. Similarly, we'll also see how we can enforce compliance on endpoints by performing compliance checks. So let's first get started with the overview. So Chef Desktop is built on the exact same foundations of Chef technology, where you have agents that are installed on the nodes or endpoints. And these nodes regularly check in with the server to fetch the latest config changes and apply them on the nodes. And the overall state of the system is represented in code and YAML config files. So the desktop also uses the exact same pattern as well, where you will represent the state of the endpoints in code and YAML config files and push it onto infra server, and endpoints will have the client, Chef client running in them, and they will frequently check in with the server to fetch latest changes and apply on those endpoints, right? And finally, there is a desktop dashboard, which is part of Automate, and it will show the status of the fleet and lets you drill down further into if there are any nodes that either have not checked in or if they ran into some kind of error, you'll be able to find all that information in the dashboard. So we will see the demo, and we'll also cover a lot of aspects of what dashboard provides, and we'll also take a small example to demonstrate how you can manage settings, also do continuous compliance on them. So, but Chef Desktop on a high level provides two important capabilities. First is its ability to manage endpoints, where it provides a single pane of glass to manage multiple OSs. And the second ability is to enforce compliance check on endpoints to quickly detect any configuration drifts. And in today's demo, we will demonstrate how you can use Chef Desktop to manage endpoint settings. And here we'll be using an example. Like I said, we'll use a small example on how to manage screensaver settings. And similarly, we will show you how you can leverage Chef Desktop to run compliance checks and make sure the endpoints don't drift from the desired state. For this, we will write a custom compliance test to check the screensaver setting. So let's start the demo with an overview of desktop dashboard. And before we start, just a small disclaimer that in the interest of time and for the better experience, we have pre-recorded the demo, and I'll be playing the video and talking through it. Right. So let's get started with the demo. Let me bring up my demo video. All right. Right. So desktop dashboard, this is the desktop dashboard that you're seeing on the screen, and it is part of Automate, and it provides a high level view of the state of your fleet. So it will display all the nodes that are registered with and managed by Chef. And you can see that there are total 16 endpoints currently managed. And it also gives us visibility into how many of them have checked in today. It will also list all the nodes on the right, and you can further get into the details of individual nodes and drill into them to check their status or error logs. So here we have selected a node to see details. In the details section, you can find the check-in history, which will be very useful to get a sense of when did the node check in last time. And this also gives us an understanding on whether the node might have all the latest changes or not. The details page will also contain things like host name, platform, the Chef client version, among other details. And if you want, you can also further drill into a specific client run. The last time the node checked in with the server, you can get into what changes were exactly applied, if it ran into issue, what were the reasons why it ran into issue. So for example, let's take the latest client run that has happened a couple of minutes ago. So when we open the client run, here you can see the status of the client check-in and all the resources it ran. And it also gives us a split between the resources that were either changed or unchanged. This will be very useful to get a sense of the areas it could have potentially changed during the client run. So here you can easily find many resources which ran successfully, which resources were changed, and the resources that were left unchanged. Finally, so here I'm right now switching between the changes that were successfully applied, and we have 14 changes that were unchanged. And so these are all the changes that were made. And finally, you can also look at the list of cookbooks or a list of cookbooks and recipes that were actually executed on this client run as well. All right. Now that we have seen how we can look at node details and also drill into to get more details around what were the different changes made and what were the changes, what were the settings that were left unchanged. Now let's look at a node that has recently failed and see how we can fetch error logs to further analyze the problem. So here I'm going to pick a node where there is a failure. So as you can see, it has recently tried to check in and it has failed. Now let's open that node and find out the exact reason why it failed. So let's try to open that. And you can see that the client run has failed and progress is stuck at 0%. And let's open the error log to find more details about it. So let's click on error log. And it says that it was not able to find the cookbooks, and you can also get more details by looking at the error trace to analyze the issue. And you can also look at the run history, which provides the previous client run history. This can be useful to understand the previous state of the node and what has changed since the last check-in that could have caused the failure. So this is how Chef Desktop Dashboard can provide you a high-level overview of the state of your fleet, and it also helps you further dig into and drill down into the exact reason why a certain node is failing, or a reason why a certain node is not checking in with the server, right? So now let's move back to our slide for a moment, and we will resume with this next part of the demo. So yeah, so next what we are going to do is we're going to take a small example where we will try to apply a screensaver setting on a Windows node. So Chef Desktop, as Sudeep mentioned, comes with premium content, which contains a cookbook and a set of resources to manage most of the common desktop settings. But you can also use community resources or extend the existing one or write your own. But for this demo, like I said, we'll be taking a small example of managing screensaver settings. So let's see how we can manage screensaver setting using Chef Desktop. And again, for this example, I'll be using Windows nodes to apply these settings, but you can also apply these settings in a very similar way for other platforms like Mac as well. All right, so going back to the Chef fundamentals, right? The state of machine is represented in code and YAML configuration files, right? So we have created a Chef cookbook, which will describe the state of the endpoint. So here we have a cookbook called Chef, desktop config, which will have a set of recipes that will describe the desired state of the endpoint. For example, we will only be configuring configuring Windows nodes, but it is very similar for configuring other platforms as well. And since we'll be configuring only Windows node, let's open the Windows recipe file. So here you can see that we have used different resources to configure things like disk encryption, password policy, automatic logout, so on and so forth. But for the demo, we are interested only in the screensaver setting. So we have used this screensaver resource to configure it. As you can see, configuring it is pretty simple. We just need to set free properties. And if you look closely, we have configured the screensaver to show up after 10 minutes for 10 minutes after 10 minutes of inactivity. And after that, it will also require a password to be entered, right? But you can also make changes and configure it as per your need as well. But once you create the recipe, right, you need to update these changes and push them onto InfraServer. The way you do it is just running two commands, chef update and chef push. And again, in the interest of time, I've already run these commands beforehand to save some time. And I've pushed these changes to the InfraServer already, right? So now that the changes are already pushed to InfraServer, we hope all endpoints are already configured for the desired state. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to open a Windows node using a remote desktop tool. So let's open the node and see if the changes have been applied successfully or not. So I'm going to open screensaver settings in control panel. And as you can see that the changes are applied, and the screensaver setting is applied for 10 minutes. Now let's try to change the setting to 15 minutes and try to deploy these changes, right? Let's try to see how we can change these configuration settings and deploy these changes to endpoints. So to do that, all you have to do is open the recipe and change the property from, right now we have it at 10 minutes. Let's say if you want to change it to 15 minutes, all you have to do is change this property, right? And then once you change and save it, you have to deploy these changes back to infra server. And the way you do it is by just running two commands. One is chef update, which will generate a log file. And then you have to run chef push command, which will push all the changes onto the infra server. So here we see that the chef update command is still running. It takes a couple of seconds to execute, and we have pushed the changes as well. Now let's switch to the endpoint node and see if these changes are applied or not. So as you can see, these changes are not yet applied. That's because the chef client that is installed on endpoints will frequently check with the chef server, and the frequency of chef client run by default is 30 minutes. So chef client will check with the server every 30 minutes. So since we have just pushed these changes to infra server, so I don't want you to guys to keep waiting for 30 minutes to see the changes reflected, right? So what I will do is I will run the chef client manually. And you can do that by opening PowerShell and running chef client command. And this is just for the demo purposes. Ideally, chef client will automatically do the client run at configured interval. By default, it is 30 minutes, but it can be configured as well. So here I've run the chef client command, which will force the chef client to do a chef client run, where it will check with the server to pull all the latest changes. So now it has started running, and as you can see, it has pulled in the latest change that we have done. So we have changed the screensaver setting from 10 minutes to 15 minutes. Here it is displaying in seconds, so that's the reason why you're seeing 900 over there. But yeah, it is pulling all the changes, and then it will apply it onto the node. So let's give it a moment, and then it will finish applying all the changes. All right. Now that it has finished applying the changes, let's try to reopen the dialog and see if the changes were reflected or not. All right, we'll open the settings and control panel. There you go. So now the screensaver setting has been changed from 10 minutes to 15 minutes, right? So now let's switch to our desktop dashboard to find the client run details of this specific client run that we have done on the node. So let's find the node. I already know what node it is. And now this is the client run that has happened. If you look at the timestamp, it's saying that the client run has happened a couple of seconds ago. Let's try to open it and see what all settings has this client run changed. So let's click on the view details. So, all right. So this is where you can find all the changes. It lists down all the changes that happened during this client run. And as you can see, we have a lot of changes that were happened, but we are interested to see what were the exact settings that were actually changed. We are not interested in the settings that were unchanged, right? So we will select the successful changes that were made. So we have total 7 changes that happened since the client run, and we can see that the screensaver setting has also changed, right? So this is how you can easily manage different settings on endpoints. Like I said, this is a very small example on how you can manage a specific setting, but you can also do much more complex things like disk encryption or installing a new app or configuring everything into having control to configure the way you want. So now let's move ahead, and then let's get to the next part of the demo, where we will show you the compliance capabilities of Chef Desktop. And so Chef Desktop also comes with compliance capabilities, where we have a huge set of compliance profiles. We support a lot of CIS standards for multiple platforms listed on the screen. But you can also write your own, or you can extend the ones that we provide, or you can also write your own. And for this specific example, what we'll be doing is we'll be creating a custom compliance check to validate the screensaver setting that we have changed. Right now, let's see how it is done. But like I said, you can use the ones that we provide, or you can also write your own. It really depends on what kind of compliance checks that you want to do. All right. So like I said, we will be writing a custom profile, right? So again, in the interest of time, we have already written the compliance check. Let's try to open that. So you have written a test profile. Here you can see that It is pretty simple. What we are doing is we're just getting a registry entry and comparing it with the value that we are expecting, right? And it is as simple as that. So in this example, we are expecting the screensaver to be set to 600 seconds or 10 minutes, right? And during compliance run, it finds if the system is configured with a different value. If the system has different value than what is expected, the node will fail. And again, so in the interest of time, I have already deployed these profiles onto all the nodes. And if you remember, we have already changed the setting of one of the endpoints to 15 minutes, right? And if the compliance check has already run, then the node will fail, because we are expecting the screensaver setting to be 10 minutes, but since we have changed it to 15 minutes, the node will fail, right? Now let's open the compliance dashboard to see the state of our fleet, right? So here you can clearly see that our fleet is not complaint anymore. And by the way, you can also quickly check all the profiles that are deployed on our fleet. So like I said, I have already deployed this profile beforehand to save time. Now let's open the failed node to check the reason for failure, right? So let's go back to our overview page, and then let's find the node that has failed. So clearly one node has failed. So yeah, let's open the node that has failed, right? So now let's open the exact reason why it has failed. It clearly says that the expected value is 600 seconds or 10 minutes, whereas it found different setting configured, right? So it has failed the compliance check, and it has listed down in the dashboard. Now, how do we go about fixing it, right? So ideally, with Chef Desktop Compliance, you can also automatically remediate any issues that you find. So you would have to write remediation scripts or use one of the scripts that we provide out of the box. But in this case, let's try to manually fix it and see if the compliance check succeeds, right? So to fix this issue, what we're going to do is we are going to go back to the setting that we have changed, and change it back to 10 minutes, which is what is expected according to our compliance check, right? So now that I've changed the settings back to 10 minutes, I will now update my changes, and then I will push these changes onto the server. So first, let's do chef update, and this will like generate the log file, and then we'll push all these changes to infra server. So let's give it a moment, and then it'll finish updating all the changes. All right, now that we have pushed all the changes onto infra server, again, ideally the chef client, so now I have opened the Windows node. Ideally, the chef client will run by default like every 30 minutes, but here again, to save time, what we're going to do is we're going to manually invoke chef client run. So let's do that. And you can do that by simply running chef client command. And this will fetch all the latest changes, and then it'll apply on this node. And like I said, this is not the ideal way you do it. Ideally, the chef client will run every it'll fetch all the details. But yeah, so I think it will finish in a moment. All right, now it has finished running. Now let's switch back to the compliance dashboard, and let's refresh the page and see if this particular node has passed the compliance check and if it is in the desired state or not. So as you can see, the compliance check is passed, and let's go back to our overview page. Open the node, you can clearly see that it is in the desired state, right? So this gives you, a high-level overview on how Chef Desktop can be used for not only managing this, but also making sure that your endpoints are in the desired state, right? And you can not only ensure that your system is in the desired state, but if there is any configuration drift, you can also bring it back to the desired state, right? So with this, I'm mostly done with my demo, but let me just switch back to my slide deck. All right. Right. All right. In the demo, we have seen, like I said, we have seen how you can use Chef to both manage and check compliance. But though I have not covered how you can actually also do automatic remediation. So when a compliance check fails, you can actually write a remediation script saying, you know what, if the screensaver setting fails, execute this remediation profile to go and fix that, right? So you can actually automate the whole remediation process as well. And although but you can also adopt an SDLC process around whole endpoint management to further automate all the manual tasks, right? Typically, the sysadmins we spoke to said they make all the changes manually, which will become very resource intensive with large fleet sizes or fleets where they have disparate sets of users with different needs, right? So they end up making all the changes through user interface, and then they deploy those changes to test machines to manually test all the changes and finally promote it to larger fleet. Whereas with Chef, we have seen our customers setting up CI/CD pipelines and automating all manual tasks. Instead of directly pushing the changes to infra server, you would push them into a code repository, which would kick off a build and testing process and deploy these changes to a staging environment. And compliance tests will be run in that staging environment. If everything is fine, if all the tests are passed, that is when these changes will be promoted to production environment. And even in the production environment, the compliance checks will be running continuously at regular intervals to make sure that the endpoints stay in the compliant state. If there is any configuration drift, remediation can quickly fix that. Again, like this setting the whole SDLC process is optional, but we've seen our customers gaining a lot of productivity and reduced number of manual errors by following this process. So finally, what does Chef Desktop bring onto the plate, right? So you'll be able to do more with less resources. We have seen our customers managing tens of thousands of laptops with just a couple of people in the team. That's just because of how Chef enables teams to automate most of the manual tasks, right? Again, with most of the process automated, there are just very few things that can actually go wrong. So this is another advantage that our customers have seen in the past. And you will not only be able to bring fleet to the desired state, but you can also keep them in that state with remediation as well. And you'll be able to track everything from who made what, when, and what has changed over time on specific endpoints as well. So you'll have all the capability to do auditing and finding out how a system state has changed and which systems are out of desired state, and you can easily fix them as well. And finally, you will have, and most importantly, right, you'll have a single process and tool chain for managing and ensuring compliance on your entire fleet. So these are some of the reasons and some of the advantages that you'll get by adopting Chef Desktop product. So with this, I'm done with my demo, and maybe we can head to the question section. But before we do that, I would like to quickly remind that we have a poll running. And I would highly encourage all of you to respond to that poll, because we will shortly be discussing the results of the poll. It will be pretty interesting to see what are the different challenges that our a larger community is facing, and we can see if we are facing similar issues, and we can brainstorm on how we can potentially solve them as well, right? And with that, I would also like to introduce John McRae. John McRae is one of the initial members who was part of Chef IT team, and he has spearheaded adopting Chef Desktop for managing laptops of Chef employees, right? So he's like an in-house expert on Chef Desktop. So we are really glad he's on the panel as well. Hey, John.
Hey, Nichal, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining the call. So, John, I have a quick question for you, right?
Sure.
I'm just curious to understand, how are you managing, Chef laptops before using Chef Desktop? How was it done before, and what advantages did you see after switching to Chef Desktop?
Sure, that's a great question. So initially, I was the IT manager before moving into engineering, and we were looking for a mechanism for managing the laptops with. And so initially we looked at Jamf, and we'd used Jamf for a while. And what we found, like, Jamf was a very terrific product, very capable. But what we found was that Jamf was not quite what we needed. It was a little too, it provided too much, it restricted too many policies. And so what we found we were doing over time was replacing Jamf policies with bash scripts being deployed by Jamf. And as we got farther in the process, we realized that we probably could be managing that with Chef. And so we moved away from Jamf into managing the laptops with Chef. And so that was really interesting for us, because it gave us an opportunity to get really fine-grained control over the laptops and the desktops, and get exactly the kinds of policies and procedures we wanted to have in place for our workers.
Got it. what would you say are top three or top two advantages that you've seen after shifting to Chef Desktop from your traditional MDM solution?
Yeah, I think that greater flexibility and control, oddly enough, much more, a lot of flexibility, a lot of control, and we get to fine tune the outcomes for the employees, right? So like some solutions tend to be one size fits all. This one allowed us to fine tune based on, if these users are developers, they might get one set of outcomes, and let's say sales staff might get a second set of outcomes because they don't need all the development tools or whatever else, right? So it was very flexible for us.
Got it. So flexibility it is.
Yeah.
All right. So Raisa, maybe it is time for us to stop the poll and share the results with the larger group. All right. So we have the results on our screens. I hope everybody is able to see this. So for the first question is, what is the most frequent task for desktop and laptop management? And we have a bunch of options here. So applying OS patches, deploying applications, configuring preferences and settings, compliance checks, and auditing. So I think we have got fairly equal amount of votes for all of the options, except configuring preference and settings, which is not far too behind. So John, in your experience, what do you think you do more often while managing end user machines?
Yeah, I think that the Chef Desktop pattern does a marvelous job of being able to apply or manage OS patching, application updates, and compliance checks, right? Because by default, the desktop pattern is integrated with an app management tool called Gorilla, which runs on Windows, or I can't think of the Mac name. There's a Mac version too. Monkey. Thank you. Integrated with Monkey that runs on the Macintosh that lets you manage the apps there as well. So I think that Chef's really well positioned to be able to manage or help you manage your application installs and OS updates. So by default, like the Chef Desktop pattern by default ships with pre-configured recipe to resource configured to enable and force OS patching to your satisfaction or your specification level. So that's taken care of for you out of the box. And so it makes it really easy to just take the default pattern, adjust some of the settings to your needs, and then deploy it to your workforce.
Got it. And the next question is, what are the major challenges that people face while managing desktops and laptops? And we have a bunch of options: visibility into the status of the fleet, getting the desktops into desired state, enforcing compliance standards on the endpoints, passing auditing checks, automating the process. Currently, too many manual tasks, I believe.
Yeah. So I think Chef does a really marvelous job here as well, because even at a basic level, audit logs are captured, and you're able to get visibility into what's going on with the nodes individually. That all bubbles up to the Chef server. And with the addition of compliance, you get really nice reporting services out of that help you identify problems and track them down. Laptops in desired state. So the great thing about the Chef is that once the nodes are deployed, either through your MDM or some other process, then you would use the MDM process to deploy Chef. And excuse me, and then within 30 minutes, the nodes should all be coming into compliance for you. So that makes it super easy. Passing audit checks is going to be, there's going to be some challenges related to this, because the first, two or three times that you run the Chef client, you may find that auditing is not to standard. And what that allows you to do then is fine tune recipes and cookbooks to bring the nodes into compliance, or use the remediation tools in compliance to bring the nodes to standard for you. Yeah, and I think the other thing that's good too is automating the process. Once deployed to the Chef server, is really a closed loop. You don't have to do a bunch of manual steps to have Chef do its thing, right? Once fully and properly deployed, Chef runs approximately every 30 minutes, plus or minus a splay, the random number to keep the Chef nodes from all checking in at the same time. and they do it automatically for you. And then what you're really worried about at that point is double checking compliance to look for deviations in settings or see who's out of compliance, and then maybe fine tuning a cookbook occasionally, or adding a new cookbook or recipe to tweak another setting for the users. But this is definitely not like a daily or hourly kind of a task. It can be fully automated and make your life easier.
Yep. And it is interesting that most of the people have selected the option saying, the major challenge is bringing the endpoints to the desired state, and as well as enforcing the compliance standards, which is the highest, right? But both are not far too behind. And I'm just curious to understand how are our attendees currently enforcing compliance standards? Maybe if you can just drop, how we are doing it in comments, we can also have some kind of discussion around it. But yeah. So Sudeep, any thoughts that you want to add on the polls that we are seeing? Pretty expected, but it's pretty interesting that getting endpoints to desired state and enforcing compliance standard is standing out compared to other options here.
Sure, and there is a financial impact to not to having compliance configuration drifts, right?
Yep.
Because you slip on any of that, and then there are, of course, fairly difficult regimes that are going to tax you, and you're going to have to shell out a bunch of money for it. But be that as it may, we've got a bunch of questions, and I think there are two that kind of lend themselves to the polls that we just completed. One is, hey. Is compliance part of the Chef desktop offering, or should we purchase this additionally? And add to that another one, do we have to create cookbooks or recipes ourselves? I think we talked a little bit about this. I think John just touched upon it, but maybe you want to get in some detail on that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Maybe I'll try to answer that, and John, you can pitch in at the end. So yeah, we've been talking Chef Desktop as a product which can do both management of settings and then compliance, right? So there are two flavors of Chef Desktop. One is purely manage. We call it Chef Desktop Manage. So if you purchase the license for, it's a yearly license. If you purchase the license for Chef Desktop Manage, you'll be able to, use that to manage your endpoint configuration and settings, right? And we also have another flavor of Chef Desktop called Chef Desktop Compliance. So if you purchase compliance, you get both manage and compliance. So you can do both. So yeah. So it really depends on what users want to do. If they are only interested in managing the configuration, then yeah, Chef Manage would be right fit for them. But if they're interested in doing both compliance and management, we would generally recommend Chef Desktop Compliance. But the product is same, the process is same, tool chain is same. It's just two flavors for people to pick and choose from. John, sorry.
And so what was the first question too? There was two in there.
Right. So the first one was more around creating cookbooks and recipes, right? I think the question was, hey, do we need to create these on our own, or are they curated? But I'll let you speak to that.
Thank you. So the basic desktop pattern comes to you pre-built, and all you're really doing is adjusting the settings for the pre-built desktop pattern for you to use for your fleet. Praveen also has a question about, can I do this with Active Directory? The answer is yes, but not against Macs and Windows at the same time, and Linux nodes too, right? So one of the great things about using Chef here is that I can have the same effect across 3 operating systems. Oh, good. I'll let Nishal answer the rest of that one. But anyway, the point is that you don't need to worry about configuring the desktop. It's pre-built, pre-ready for you to go, and you can also extend it if you're feeling like you need to add some more nuance or detail to it. So you're free to do that as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. Let's talk.
No, I was just saying, John, I have marked it as answered for you. So I think you've already answered it. So Sudeep, over to you.
Sure. There's another one that kind of got answered separately, but I think for the sake of the broader audience, is Chef agentless, or does it require an agent? John, do you want to take that? I know you've answered this once, but
sorry, could you ask it again? I didn't quite hear you.
Is Chef agentless, or does it require an agent?
So Chef has a binary that runs. I don't know if I call it an agent, but it's a binary that runs, and it's typically configured using cron or task scheduler on Windows to run approximately every 30 minutes and then check in, look for updates, and run run the cookbook stack against your local node.
Got it.
So in a nutshell, yeah, it is. It requires an agent, but it's debatable if it is an agent or it's a client, right? But yeah.
Yeah, that's really what I was getting at.
All right. There's another one that asks, hey, we already have a solution to manage desktops. Can we just use a compliance component separately?
Of course, yeah. And in fact, we have some customers who do exactly that. They have some solutions which they have invested a lot into, and it has been very tightly integrated with their setup. So, but they were only interested in using Chef Desktop for doing compliance checks and vulnerability scans on their endpoints. And it can definitely be possible, and it will be the process and the tool chain of doing that is pretty similar to what we have demonstrated, and it will be very seamless as well. So, John, would you like to add?
I'm sorry, once again, I missed part of that question. Could you repeat it?
Yeah, the question is, do we can users use just the compliance component of it without using the manage aspect of Chef Desktop?
As far as I know, that's correct. They can do that. Yep.
All right.
You only need this mechanism
Thanks.
to be able to run. You need to have a mechanism running to run the audit cookbook against your nodes. So you would deploy that portion through an MDM or similar structure. And after you've configured nodes with whatever process you're using, then you have to run inspect to, get the current state of the node. Yeah. Not inspect, the compliance portion, the audit cookbook. Yep.
Got it. All right. The next one is around policies and settings in Linux, right? So Ryan asks, are Linux policies and settings able to exactly match with Mac and Windows? I think the question is, are we able to do the same thing that we're able to do in terms of capability in Mac and Windows with that of Linux?
So I think the short story is, broadly, I think we can sign up to say yes. Broadly, we can make Linux match Mac and Windows settings. More specifically, though, we'd want to know which distro of Linux you're using. Like if you're custom building your own distro of Arch or something else, maybe. But like for Ubuntu, Red Hat, CentOS, Debian, I can say yes.
So it depends on the distribution, in short.
Yeah.
Got it. The next one is, well, what is the licensing model for Chef Desktop? Maybe Nishchal, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think I've briefly answered that question. So it's yearly license. It's per node, so it scales based on your needs and your business. So yeah, and like I said, we have two flavors: one for Chef Manage and Chef Desktop Compliance. Yeah.
Got it. The next one is, do machines need to be on a VPN to get updates or new policies or configurations, or is it in the cloud? Sean, do you want to take that one?
So this is kind of like it depends, because like they don't necessarily need to be on a VPN, but then they have to worry about exposing the Chef server or the audit server in a way. So you could put them on live on the internet, but no, like technically they do not need to be in a VPN. I guess that's the answer. I guess that's a short answer.
Got it.
I think it.
Go ahead.
I've seen our customers doing both. I mean, a complete VPN setup and also a setup where it speaks to.
All right. I think we kind of lost him for a bit.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's okay. I think the crux was both are possible. The next question, I think, was alluding to your previous answer, John, around it depends on which distribution of Linux is supported. I think the supplementary question is Fedora supported?
Yes.
Would you be able to say, okay, so yes is the answer.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Chef, broadly speaking, supports a fairly substantial number of Linux distributions.
Great. Thanks, John. The next one is, we already, I don't know if we might have answered this before. We already use an MDM solution to manage laptops? Does this solution completely replace it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So um, it really depends on what you're trying to do, because we have seen some of our customers who use Chef Desktop in conjunction with their existing MDM solution. For example, they use MDM for bootstrapping their nodes and installing Chef client on the endpoints. And once the once the endpoint is bootstrapped and client is installed, Chef client is installed in it, and from that point on, Chef takes the control and manages the machines, right? So what we've seen is our customers use MDM for few things, like maybe bootstrapping the node and doing specific things, and then leave rest of it for Chef to get all the goodness of automation and setting up SDLC process around it, and getting all the advantages of it, right? So it really depends. If you want to completely replace, you can replace it, or if you can use it on top of your existing solution as well.
And John, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that Chef will, you would basically configure Chef to be the last thing you configure when your MDM is deploying a node. And so you'll have Chef, you'll have your MDM deploy a Chef client to the node and configure and set up a couple basic configuration files, in which case Chef will take off at that point and pull the configuration in for you. Yeah.
Sure. We've got a couple of questions from Praveen, but maybe we'll reach out to you separately and answer them. I think we're pretty much up on time. So I'll hand it back to Raisa, but before I do, I'd like to thank everyone on this call. It's been a pleasure having you on this webinar, and thank you for the lovely questions as well. But with that, Raisa, do you have any closing comments?
Thanks, Sudeep, Nishil, and John. Thanks a lot. We hope all of you found value in the information that was presented today. If you like what you saw, we encourage you to share the presentation with your teammate and professional networks. So also to remind, the on-demand version should be available in a couple of days, and we will email you as soon as it's ready. You will be able to access it using the same audience link that you're using now. So with that, thanks again for attending and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everyone.